cosmic outlaw, the legend of Roan Hale. In a galaxy ruled by unbreakable codes and cold machines, one man discovered the most dangerous algorithm of all, defiance. Part 9. Moonlit debts and the liberation of Vargo's velvet caravan high in Lockhaven Spire. Lady Mira Eldridge stood alone on the wide balcony of her family's ancestral apartments, the cool night breeze tugging gently at the loose strands of her auburn hair and carrying the distant, resin-sweet scent of the expanse far below. The twin moons bathed the valley in silver, turning the rolling hills into a sea of shadowed waves, but her gaze was fixed on the faint glow of campfires deep in the greenwood, teeny sparks that only someone who knew exactly where to look would notice. Word of Roan's latest raid on the quantum convoy had reached the spire by midday, but tonight fresh whispers raced through the noble corridors. Merchant Prince Vargo the Voluptuous, arriving at Lord Harlan's estate in nothing but a fruit crate, still indignant and powdered. Mira's heart quickened at the tale, a helpless smile blooming as she imagined the scene. Every triumph of Roan's bought her people time, eased suffering in the frontier, and chipped away at Kane's smug certainty. Yet it was the man himself who haunted her thoughts, his scarred, steady hands, the low rumble of his laugh in the dark, the way he had looked at her as though she were the only fixed star in his wild sky. Heat rose unbidden to her cheeks. She pressed her palms to the cool stone, breathing slow, remembering the secret glade where she had once matched him shot for shot with a bow, her laughter mingling with his under summer leaves. Proper lady in the spire she might be, but the wildness in her blood answered as like an arrow finding true. Below her, warm lights glowed in the old manor house and the cluster of cottages that housed those she now protected, nearly 200 souls who tended vineyards, orchards, and irrigation channels on pride and dwindling credits. They were hers to shield, and every cycle bought with cunning kept them safe a little longer. Among them moved Friar Tuck, broad and gentle, who had arrived rain-soaked weeks ago with staff and satchel, once a monk of the Order of the Open Hand, battlefield healer and confessor to off-world legions. He had been cast out for denouncing the syndicate's seizure of temple lands. Mira had offered sanctuary the moment she saw him kneel to comfort a gate child. Now he brewed remedies, set bones, and when ears were friendly shirt tailies of greenwood outlaws with a knowing twinkle. That same night, deep in the expanse, the merry men prepared for a raid unlike any before. A gaudy pleasure-barge drifted along the forest trade road like a tipsy wedding cake, repulsor of platforms draped in clashing silks, lanterns pulsing jewel colors to sultry base, incense thick enough to chew. Merchant Prince Vargo the Voluptuous reclined amid cushions, feeding candied dates to an attendant while boasting of tonight's exclusive performance for Kane's allies. Roan crouched on a mossy ridge, eyes dancing. "This one's going to be legendary," Little John grunted. "Legendary? It's a floating offense against sobriety. Will Scarlet flourish dramatically? An aesthetic atrocity. It will liberate in the name of good taste." Alan Adale strummed silent chords. Working title: The Ballad of Vargo's Bare Necessities. Needs a saucy refrain. Twilight fell. Alan's jammer hit the barge, light strobed like a malfunctioning disco, music warping into comical squeaks. Grapnel stumped home, green shadows swung aboard. Little John landed with a thud that rippled silk. Health and safety inspection. Citizens were dropped beside him, bowing low, specifically inspecting for crimes against dignity and involuntary labor. Vargo erupted from his cabin like a perfumed volcano. Fabrics straining, powder cracking, brigands, miscreants. "I'll have your heads on." He froze at Roan's politely pointed arrow. Guard 6 bored mercenaries lowered stun batons with almost grateful sighs. One muttered, "Just don't scratch the liquor." Will addressed the dancist and lithe figures in gauzy splendor. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished NBIs, your contracts, if you please." Lyra, Emerald Street leader, stepped forward. Biometric vault, tamper alert, straight to Kane's desk. Roan's grin sharpened. "Then we tamper delicately." Tuck knelt before the vault, muttering, "Forgive me, Lord, for cracking a lock on a rolling den of iniquity, but the iniquity's overpriced." Each warning beep drew a squeak from Vargo, whose jowls quivered like disturbed pudding. Meanwhile, pure absurdity reigned. Will clapped for attention. "Places, everyone. Let's see what you dance like when no one owns the steps." Alan Comendier de Luton struck up a jaunty reel. The dancers, freed by the moment, exploded into joyous chaos. Veils flung skyward, acrobatic flips. One fellow vaulting clean over Little John's head while the giant applauded slowly. Lyra led a conga line that snaked around bound guards. Vargo flailed. "That's copyrighted choreography. I'll sue." Little John patted his shoulder gently. "For him. Sue the forest, mate. Trees don't accept summons." Alan improvised on the spot. Oh, Vargo the Vast, with belly so grand, thought he'd sail through the woods with a naughty wee band. But Roan and his men, with a wink and a twirl, freed all the dancers and gave him a whirl. At whirl storm, the towering acrobat spun Vargo like an unwilling top until a merchant wailed for mercy. The vault clicked, contracts voided, Credits split. Then the surprised 5 dancers stepped forward. Lyra, the Quicksilver twins Dario and Dario, yes. Both Dario artistic statement. Kit, the juggler, and Storm. Lyra spoke for them. Some of us fancy a longer adventure. Your camp could use professional chaos agents. We joined him proudly, payment and decent stew and better company. Will clutched his heart. I'm slain. Little John rumbled approval. More watchers covered. More songs written. Welcome to the green. Roan laughed outright. Fair warning, we rob fat merchants and dodge drones. Not courtly. Kit smirked, already juggling 3 confiscated wine bottles. We've dodged worse patrons and tips were terrible. Departure was perfection. Little John hoisted the shrieking Vargo, mind the silk, he's delicate, and deposited him in the fruit crate. Alan nailed a sign. Returned to Sendor, 1 overripe merchant, handled with tongs. The twins Dario and Dario added a handwritten note visible through the air holes. Diet recommended. As the stripped barge drifted on, the 5 new wild cards rode sleds with the men, already plotting mischief. That night at camp, chaos blossomed. Kit juggled flaming brands safely. Mostly, Storm taught Little John backflips. Succeeded once, collapsed laughing the rest. The Darios challenged Will to an increasingly absurd dance-off that ended with everyone in a heap. Lyra sat by Roan at the fire, watching flames. You fight like you dance, she teased. Controlled, but craving wild steps. Roan's gaze drifted to distant spire lights. I've only danced wild once. With a lady who shoots straighter than she curtsies and out-argues half the nobles in Lockhaven. Lyra smiled knowingly. Sounds like trouble worth waiting for. Alan premiered the full ballad, new verses added by committee. And 5 dancers joined for the fun yet to be. With flips and with fire and a juggler's spree. So raise up your cups to the greenwood so bright. Vargo's in a box, and the world's set to right. Laughter rang through starlit branches, wild and free. High above, Mira heard the echo on the wind or dreamed a 10 pressed a hand to a racing heart. The wildness in her blood singing an answer only the forest truly knew. The threads tightened. The company grew merrier, rowdier, stronger. And the reckoning, when it came, would shake the spire to its foundations.